Did you know that? You can watch all fighting and boxing pay-per-view at no extra cost. On FluxVIX.com, you can access to 1,000 live channels plus The Last of Us. Movies and series at a fraction of the cost of regular services. For more information, go.
It's great to have your company. Welcome, gents. Now, Rob, a bit of news has broken since we last spoke. You're fighting Reinier de Ridder in Abu Dhabi next month. How did that come about?
I am. Honestly, we've kind of been waiting for a while to get any sort of confirmation on any fight lock-in. And at first, I thought it was a Delize. They offered it to me close to the beginning of the year because I gave them a date of late June that I wanted to fight in.
Right.
And I said, yep, straight away. And then they said, hold tight, actually, things are moving, whatever. And then they came to me with de Ridder. Actually, funny enough, last episode we were here, I think in the back room, they came to me and I said, don't say anything about it yet, but yeah, I think it's de Ridder, so that fight's happening.
Yeah, I was really hoping to break that news on the last show, but hey, we'll respect you in that regard. But as we take a look at our Musashi knockout moment, Reinier de Ridder shocked a lot of people by handing Bo Nickel his first career loss. How do you assess Reinier as an opponent?
I think Reinier is a tough guy. He's obviously well experienced. He has 2 titles in one championship. He's a tough guy, and you can see when he moves forward. You can see he's used to fights. He's used to adversity. He's used to like being on the losing end and coming back. He's just a really tough fighter, and he obviously he's got a high level skill set as well. And I'm going to have to approach this fight with all pistons firing because he's a tough guy. He's one of those guys that if you relax on and get complacent with, he's going to run over you.
Really excited for that one. And Volk, there are rumours swirling that your next title defence will be against Yair Rodriguez around September. Is that what you're aiming for?
Well, that's, again, they're obviously rumours. Nothing's locked in. It's pretty clear that it wasn't going to be Mosvar. Because that's who I thought would be, obviously him being undefeated and on the sort of a tear that he's on. But I think they've matched him up. You've seen him tweet something about that, so he's already went out and made that public that he's obviously unfortunate he can't fight for the title. Yair's name has popped up. No dates set right now. So again, I think it's just a lot of moving parts all through the whole divisions. So I think there's a lot happening right now. So we'll see what's happening. We'll see what comes up. But that's all I guess I can really tell you is everyone pretty much knows the situation and the rumours you're hearing are pretty much true, but nothing's locked in.
And Rob, I was similar to you in that I got really excited to see Yair Rodriguez potentially take on Diego Lopez after their antics at the press conference. Yeah. You expressed that on your podcast, MMRcade, and Yair Rodriguez responded to you in quite surprising fashion. I didn't expect this from Yair. Can I get your response to that?
Is that what he posted?
Yeah.
Dude, sorry, bro. Just couch talk?
Yeah.
I don't know. He's an emotional guy. I've backed him in a lot of his fights, and I've said only good things. And I didn't even say anything negative to him about him in that clip that he's responding to.
You weren't trying to discredit the fight or anything. You just said that the fight against Diego Lopez would probably be a better storyline. So I was really surprised when I saw that from Yair.
Yeah, you're right. I totally I understand what you're saying. It's where did that sort of come from? Because I think a lot of people are sort of on they're thinking the same sort of thing. They're even I thought that when they had their face-off and I was there in front of them and they're behind me going, I'm going, oh, well, they're setting up, I plan on taking this guy out. They're going to be fighting. So even I was thinking that. So I was actually a little surprised that his name got mentioned straight after the press conference. And again, I don't mind the guy. You're right, he can get a little emotional, but he's actually a really nice guy. But I'm not going to knock him off his opportunity. If that's what comes, I'm not going to be the one to say no. But I think it would probably be Mobza. Yeah. But it wasn't. So that's why it's a tricky one. But you can understand everyone's sort of frustration, and people are going to speak up. So I'm surprised that he got a little emotional about that one.
Well, he's got to chill out a little bit. It was just couch talk. If we're looking at it from an objective point of view, he lost to you. He lost to Ortega. He had a win against Pitbull, but nothing crazy, right? Yeah, it just makes sense, especially with the bad blood of Diego just losing. I don't know. It all made sense. And I didn't even say anything bad. He's got to chill out. I really like him. I hope this doesn't affect our relationship, Yair, because I love the way you fight. I almost never bet against you. I said almost, but almost never bet against you. So just, yeah, don't take it personally, dude.
To be fair, I get the sense that he didn't actually watch the episode. I think he saw a quote tile from like an MMA news outlet or whatever, and then just responded angrily to it. I reckon if he actually watched the episode of your show, he wouldn't have been as put out.
Yeah, it is
that is going to happen a lot too, you know, when people clip in certain things and they don't get the full story behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens all the time. It's honestly, I don't really care.
Yeah.
You know,
You can get this guy to bash him up again.
chill out. Get Volk to sick Volk on you again. Yeah, I don't care.
Did you know that? You can watch all fighting and boxing pay-per-view at no extra cost. On FluxVIX.com, you can access to 1,000 live channels plus The Last of Us. Movies and series at a fraction of the cost of regular services. For more information, go to FluxVIX.com or scan the QR code on the screen.
Reinier de Ridder is 17-2 and is the former 1 middleweight and light heavyweight champion, and recently it was announced that he signed to the UFC and will be making his debut in the middleweight division against Gerald Meerschaert. So before that goes down, let's take a look at his MMA career so far to answer the question, how good is Reinier de Ridder actually? Reinier began his MMA career on June 1st, 2013 at the age of 22. Prior to his debut, he trained in judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. In his first MMA fight at light heavyweight, he fought Marco West, and Reinier displayed his high-level grappling by judo throwing Marco and attempting a couple of submissions before locking up a triangle choke that forced a tap. Following this win, Reinier didn't fight until more than 2 years later when he faced Rene Hoppe, and this fight took place mostly in the clinch where both men traded shots and tried to bring each other down. But in the second round, Reinier secured the takedown and locked up an armbar that forced the tap. 7 months later, Reinier fought Michaelis Efstratio. After feeling each other out on the feet, Reinier secured a takedown and threw ground and pound before locking up an arm triangle choke that forced a tap. 5 months later, Reinier fought Alexander Heinrich, and Reinier was picking Alexander apart on the feet due to his size advantage, and although Alex tried to bring the fight down, Reinier denied his attempts and ended up connecting with a huge knee and punches that ended the fight. 5 months later, Reinier moved down to middleweight and fought Marcus Prodl, and although Reinier was pressing forward early, he got caught with a shot to the body that seemed to hurt him. This led to Marcus shooting for the takedown, and although he was finding some success, Reinier was able to avoid these shots or get back up easily as he was constantly threatening with submissions. In the second round, Reinier connected with punches that rocked Marcus, and after judo throwing him to the mat, Reinier locked up a rear naked choke that put Marcus to sleep. A month later, Reinier fought for the vacant 360 middleweight championship against Lamine Talbi, and this was a one-sided fight from Reinier as he dominated with takedowns, ground and pound, and submission attempts. There were many times where this fight looked like it was going to be finished, but Lamine survived until the third, where Reinier locked up a rear naked choke that forced the tap, making Reinier the 360 middleweight champion. After picking up 3 more first-round submission wins, Reinier made his debut with 1 and fought Fen Rong. And this was a quick 76-second fight that saw Reinier bring the fight down and secure a Darce choke that put Fen to sleep. 5 months later, Reinier moved back up to light heavyweight and fought Gilberto Galvayo. And despite Gilberto being a juicy juice boy, the size of Reinier was too much for him as he'd get taken down and controlled on the ground. Early in the second, Reinier secured a takedown and began throwing grounded knees that knocked Gilberto out. 8 months later, Reinier fought Leandro Ataides. And honestly, Leandro was finding more success as he would have bursts on the feet that would back up Reinier, and when Reinier tried to bring the fight down, he was unable to do so or was just unable to keep Leandro down. Yes, Reinier did have his moments on the feet and more specifically in the clinch, but I thought overall, Leandro did enough to get the win, but after 3 rounds, the judges awarded the unanimous decision victory to Reinier. Despite this controversial decision, Reinier got a shot at the 1 middleweight championship against double champion Ong Lang Sung, and Reinier made quick work of the champ by immediately bringing him down and getting a hold of his back, and after some time, he locked up a rear naked choke that forced a tap, making Reinier the new 1 middleweight champion. But Reinier decided 1 belt wasn't enough, so 6 months later, he fought Ong Lang Sung for a second time, but this time for the light heavyweight championship. And in contrast to their first fight, this bout went all 5 rounds, but once again, Reinier absolutely dominated with his grappling as he brought the fight down with ease, connected with ground and pound and attempted submissions. Credit to Ong for showing a lot of toughness throughout this fight, but it was fairly one-sided, so by the end, Reinier won by unanimous decision to become the new one light heavyweight champion. 10 months later, Reinier moved back down to middleweight to defend his title against welterweight champion Kamran Abasov. And in classic de Ridder fashion, he controlled the action by bringing the fight down, throwing ground and pound, and attempting submissions. Eventually, the pace became too much for Kamran, so by the third, Reinier was able to lock up an arm triangle choke that forced a tap. 5 months later, Reinier put his middleweight title on the line against former one middleweight champion Vitaly Bigdash. Although Vitaly looked like he was going to finish the fight early with a guillotine, Reinier escaped and began throwing shots from above before trying to lock up a Kimura, and although Vitaly was able to reverse him, Reinier went on to lock up an inverted triangle choke that put Vitaly to sleep. 5 months later, Reinier moved back up to light heavyweight to defend his title against one heavyweight interim champion, Anatoly Molikin. And Reinier was simply no match against Anatoly as he got picked apart on the feet and had his takedowns denied. Anatoly was the smaller fighter, but his power was apparent, and eventually this led to a right hand that dropped Reinier at the end of the first, and after some more punches, the ref stepped in. The two would fight again 3 months later, but this time for Reinier's middleweight championship, as Anatoly looked to become the first simultaneous triple champion in a major MMA promotion. And it looked like he was going to do it because although Reinier gave Anatoly more problems this time around, Anatoly's power and pressure was just too much for Reinier, who was unable to impose his grappling. This ended up becoming a one-sided beatdown, and with Reinier unable to get up in the third round, the ref stopped the fight. This ended up being Reinier's final fight in one before signing with UAE Warriors. In his first fight with the promotion, he fought Magomed Murad Kasayev, and Reinier was back to his old form as he secured a takedown early on and got a hold of Magomed Murad's back, which led to ground and pound that eventually forced the ref to step in. This was Reinier's most recent fight, and in September of 2024, it was announced that he signed with the UFC and will be making his debut in the promotion's middleweight division against Gerald Meerschaert in November of 2024. So after going 17-2 in a career that saw him become a two-division champion in one, how good is Reinier de Ridder actually? So clearly, Reinier is a grappling first fighter. His judo and BJJ skills have led to him searching for the takedown and beating down his opponents on the ground with ground and pound and looking to lock up the submission. And I do have to give credit to Reinier for this because he's not your classic lay and pray fighter that is content with bringing the fight down and winning by decision. He actually goes for the finish, and there have been many times where he took that risk and it didn't work out for him, yet it did not deter him from always trying to end the fight. Out of his 17 wins, only 2 of them went to the judges' scorecards, which shows that he is not your average grappling dominant fighter. Now on the feet, I'll admit he's nothing to gloat about. He's good at throwing knees due to his usual size advantage against most of his opponents, but when he goes up against someone who is not smaller than him or has good striking, he gets exposed, and I could understand the arguments from people saying that he's a one-trick pony, especially heading into the UFC's middleweight division, which is filled with elite level strikers. But I do think his grappling alone is going to trouble some fighters at 185 because first off, I like how he decided to move down to middleweight because he will definitely be a bigger fighter for the division. Secondly, the 185-pound division in the UFC doesn't have the strongest of grapplers, which of course is a huge benefit for Reinier. In many ways, he reminds me of UFC middleweight Jack Hermansson, who primarily likes to bring the action down, and honestly, I can see Reinier's career playing out like this. He's going to be able to beat many middleweights, but when it comes to the top names, I don't think he'll be able to get past them, and this opinion probably would have been different if Reinier was making his UFC debut 2 to 4 years ago. But today, he's 34 years old, and although he has had a career where he hasn't taken too much damage, I just think he's coming to the end of his prime, and that's just not a good thing considering how many young fighters are on the come up in the UFC's 185-pound division. I do hope, like Jack, he can improve on his striking a little more because I think with his size, he can definitely pose a threat to some fighters on the feet. As for his debut fight against Gerald Meerschaert, I think this is a great test for Reinier to see if he is in fact a high-level grappler that everyone is saying he is, because if he manages to out-grapple Gerald, then we'll know that this guy is legit on the ground. I'd honestly also like to see him fight Jack Hermansson because I think that fight would negate the grappling for both men, which would lead to a back-and-forth battle on the feet. The most I can see for Reinier as a UFC fighter is reaching the top 5 and maybe a shot at the title, but I just don't think he'll capture UFC gold at this point in his career. Like Jack,
Did you know that? You can watch all fighting and boxing pay-per-view at no extra cost. On FluxVIX.com, you can access to 1,000 live channels plus The Last of Us. Movies and series at a fraction of the cost of regular services. For more information, go to FluxVIX.com or scan the QR code on the screen.